Welcome to the first ever episode of the Whippersnapper podcast, a youthful perspective into the classics of science fiction and fantasy. Now, joining today are Anthony, Corey, and Marielle. But first, you might be asking, what is this whole snapper thing about? Well, we, as the young generations of millennials or something, we are dedicated to the awesomeness that is science fiction and fantasy. But we've discovered over folks and from things like Appendix N that there seems to be a lot of stories that we haven't heard about, that we're missing out on, all the great classics and just things that people used to read. Stories so great that everyone knows about them. Right now, it's things like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Game of Thrones. So that are things like Lord of the Rings and Narnia that are much older, but still have quite a grip on our culture and fandoms. But apparently there's more. So this show is dedicated to diving into things like the pulps and whatever great lists that I get that I can find about all the great books that all the old people used to read, or the old people now. They like things like the cool authors, whatever they used to read when they were a kid.
We're the young
What was it about?
whippersnappers who are basically just, aspiring to be
We
the old farts.
Yes, we're the old farts in making, but right now we're the whippersnappers. So that's what we're about. Doing some fun, talky stuff. We'll have episodes and talk about different things. Like maybe we'll have an episode about Star Trek or different movies or pulps and whatnot. So
Miyazaki.
introduction time.
Oh yes.
Mhm.
So I'll go
I'm
first.
preparing myself for that one.
Me too. I haven't even started. Oh my goodness. We'll get to that later.
Take your time.
So I am your host, A.M. Freeman, or April Freeman, or the Cheerweasel, as I have just now decided my animal familiar is. I am published in the Forbidden Thoughts anthology. I am a blogger at the Superversive SF blog and participate in the live streams, the roundtable discussions. If you're familiar with Superversive SF, you've probably seen me around. I am the youngest, and I write all the time and live on a farm and um, dance alone in my room at night sometimes. But and write, I do a lot of writing, and I have an imaginary cat named Muse who follows me around. So that is me. Next, we have Anthony, who is the robot. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hi, my name's Anthony. I am called the robot now. We decided this like 3 minutes before this started, and I've embraced it totally. I'm the editor of the anthology God Robot, which has 8 different authors, most of them involved in the Superversive team some way, including John C. Wright, El Jaji Lamplighter, and others. I am a writer also for Superversive SF and for the Castalia House blog, where, along with Josh Young, I'm one of the writers for the Superversive column there. And I have stories published in Jason Rennie's Sci-Fi Journal, and 2 stories and the frame story of God Robot, besides my editing work there. That is
Excellent.
my body of work so far. It's very small.
It's a
I'll
start,
make
though.
you feel
Hopefully we
better.
get a chance to fatten it up.
Yes. And next, we have Anthony's sister, Marielle, who is the mermaid. Go ahead, Marielle.
Hi, I am the mermaid as of 5 minutes ago, which is especially funny considering I can't swim. My
Ooh,
body
plot
of
twist.
My body of work is even smarter than my brother's. I have 2 short stories published. My first stories were published in the God Robot anthology, which I worked on as assistant editor, which for a first-time author is absolutely unreal because I've been published among some of the greats in the same anthology, which is like unbelievable.
I can relate.
Oh yeah, I know. And
Crazy.
the next thing that's going to be published by me is I helped write the frame story for the anthology. I'm helping edit with my brother. So that's going to be coming hopefully sooner than later. And yeah, that's my body of work so far.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mermaid. And next we have the dragon, Corey,
Hello, my name is Corey McCleary.
who is a dragon as of 5 minutes ago, just like everyone else.
Yes, I'm an aspiring kind of author. I publish a story on Wattpad that is free to read if you subscribe to the site, which isn't that much of an issue to do. I got in touch with the Superversive SF movement after reading some of the stuff, after kind of getting finding John C. Wright's blog, and then that led to his wife, which led to the Superversive SF blog, and they ended up inviting me onto one of the live streams on romance, which is my book has a very large arc in it that concerns romance. I knew a bit about, and my body of work is that story, and hopefully a few others that I'm working on, and got some prospective buyers.
Yes, many things in the works.
Yes.
Us, our little gang. I'm sure as more episodes come, we'll have more guests and such. But for now, it is the Cheerweasel, the robot, and the dragon coming to you live here from the Superversive Universe blimp that I am piloting right now. So,
I just thought you were
our
cosplaying
first-
as Jason Rennie, so.
Our airship.
No, Jason is actually, he lives in that blimp, but he just lets other people control it sometimes. He says he lives in Australia, but we all know that's just a
front.
front.
Australia
Definitely.
doesn't really exist.
I mean, he can fly over Australia if he wants to.
He anchors and gets fuel in Australia.
What's in
But
Australia?
he over to the U.S. for me to use. He's staying there right now, but he actually lives in that dirigible thing. The next. So now we've introduced everyone. This first episode, as you can tell, is the obligatory origin story. So now you've met us, and now you need a bit of story. So we're going to talk about stories because that's what we're here for. One of you, I'll go last. One of you guys fight for the death, choose who goes first. We're going to talk about our favorite stories growing up, because the whole thing with the whippersnappers and the old farts is the old farts had all these stories that everyone read when they were growing up. And as they became an old fart, they realized that the younger generation, the whippersnappers, they didn't know about these stories. So they have their whole thing of stories they love that we're going to have to dive into at some point. But and get to know us, let's talk about the stories we loved that we discovered. So, who wants to go first?
I guess I can, and it can actually kind of segue into how I came about finding the genre of science fiction and fantasy. I started out actually, I learned to read at a much earlier age than most of my peers. My dad basically, over summer break after kindergarten, we wouldn't go buy a stop sign practically until he had me read out what it said, or buy it any store until I was able to like read, oh, this is what the sign says. So entering,
wow, that's intense.
Well, entering first grade, I had like I did not like it, but entering first grade, I had maybe a third or fourth grade reading level, and it just kind of accelerated from there. And thing is, all I got to read in school was all the things that we were given fiction-wise was a book series called Junie B. Jones. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I couldn't stand it. I lived suburbia life. I didn't need to read about it. So I got really bored from that, and every week when my class went to the library in elementary school, I would check out a nonfiction book. Things about science, for example, and how stuff works, how light works, how water works, and they're things written for like first graders. So it wasn't anything terribly complicated, but it was interesting for me. And then my mom tried to get me, I blame my mother for this, she tried to get me to read Harry Potter. And I wouldn't, because I knew it was fiction, and therefore it was going to be boring. And
I love how you
refused.
said this whole thing to get to the conclusion that as a child you believed fiction was boring.
Yes, because when I saw that cover, I'm like, that looks interesting, but I know it's a trap. Until
I know.
what ended up happening was my dad and my mom got me to watch the Harry Potter movie, and I'm like, wait, the book's like this? So I go and I read the book, and I couldn't put it down. Then I got the next one. Took a while, but I eventually got the third one. And it got to the point where I went from being completely uninterested, if not like vehemently opposed to fiction, to my parents were bribing me with the last Harry Potter book to read the reading list, the summer reading list. They said, if you read all of the books on the summer reading list, we'll buy you book 7 of the Harry Potter series, just when it was coming out. And I was like, okay, where do I start? Because the books were boring, but I read them anyway because it could get me Harry Potter. I also got into Lord of the Rings. I read through the Prydain Chronicles, and I think the only science fiction I started out with was like I got it for like a kid's novelization of the Star Wars books. But other than that, I just was mostly a fantasy nerd. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
my story.
That's pretty fun. Let's see, Anthony or Marielle, do you want to go next? Thoughts on what or comments on Corey's little story?
I think
Corey's story, that rhymes.
Harry Potter's going to be a theme. I think we grew up in an era where that was so prevalent.
Yeah, all
I
except
think
for me.
that
I'll talk about
except
that in a
April.
minute, though.
Yeah, let's
it's
switch to
funny
April.
it's funny you say that, Anthony, because I was going to say that growing up, my thing wasn't actually Harry Potter until I hit like high school. I didn't actually read it until I was a sophomore, and I had to take my midterm exams, and I needed something to read in the 2 hours after I finished them. So I figured it would pass the time. My thing when I was younger was actually Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Uh-huh.
That
That's
is my
my
brother and my dog in the background.
My brother and my dog. Yeah.
There's 2 brothers and 2 dogs?
No, 1 dog, and I have 2.
When you go to work.
And I'm going to work at 6. I have to tell
Okay.
my brother that. Versus podcast.
All right.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Yeah, Harry Potter. I guess we can talk about Harry Potter a little bit because that does seem to be like one of the generation. I've only read the first 3 books, and that was only last year. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't. For me, I mean, I've heard of Harry Potter. I don't know if I want to read it because, of course, there was some people that would be like, "Oh, Harry Potter's so evil," which I mean, it's just a fiction story.
Yeah,
It's a kid's fiction story.
Yeah.
So I mean, I still
mean,
like. I don't know if I'll read it yet. I'll read it at some point.
John C. Wright wrote an old article that all about how Harry Potter was really subversive. So good enough for me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I remember that. Yeah, I mean it's definitely got like Harry Potter's definitely like heroics and good stuff like that, fighting against forces of darkness. But I never read it. Mom got, and I think we may just be missing one of them, but she got the Harry Potter books that were there for what, like 25 cents or something. So I've read the first 3, but I haven't read the rest. I mean, to me, well, for me, Harry Potter's like everyone loves Harry Potter, but honestly, I like Rachel Griffin better because first and it doesn't take an entire semester for something to happen. It only takes a week, and a lot happens, and it's awesome, and the characters are so fun. So personally, it's a little bit controversy, but and it's now forever recorded on this live stream, so I'll have to stand by my conviction that I like Rachel Griffin better than Harry Potter. I'm sorry. Don't burn me at the stake.
Yeah.
Have you guys read that yet?
Rachel Griffin series?
I got the first one. I haven't read
On
any
it,
of the rest.
but not yet.
Yeah, no, but I want to. She was actually the first superversive writer I read that was part of the superversive sci-fi.
Jaje.
Yeah, when she submitted her story to God Robots.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Jaji, I actually just finished the first Prospero Lost book, and now I'm frothing in maddened anger because books 2 and 3 are not on Kindle.
Oh yeah, I was lucky. I had the second Prospero book sitting upstairs. I can understand though. My brothers had to wait until they went to the library again to get the next one, so they were also.
Yes,
And
I'm
I
quite
didn't
annoyed at
understand.
that.
I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of a hard cliffhanger, but it's okay. And they're like, no, it's not.
Yes. I will say this: I like the Prospero series better than Rachel Griffin, but I like them both. So
Yeah,
I have a story with Jaji's
they're
work
both
that
really
I feel comfortable saying this only in light of the end of this story. So it's
Okay.
very, I think it's amusing. The first thing by Jaji I had ever read, she did a story in the sci-fi journal called The HMS Mangled Treasure. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
if any of you have read it or not. It was
I
a
have
while
not.
back.
I think I remember.
Said, I'm going to say this comfortable in how the story ends. I read it and I hated it. I hated it so
remember that
much
now.
I could not. Yeah, I could not believe it was published. I thought it was so bad. I'm like, this story is a
Please
total.
forgive us.
Yeah. Well, this story is a total disaster. I can't believe it's published. So later, we're doing God Robot. Yeah, we're doing God Robot later, and we're inviting authors to participate in it, which is how we did it. I literally emailed different authors and said, hey, want to contribute a story? And one of the people we decided to ask was John C. Wright. We knew he was married to Jaji, so we said it's probably polite if we also say, and Jaji could contribute. I mean, but people seem to really love it, and she has a popular book series, so, I can't imagine that people will be unhappy if they see a story by her in it. And so both of them accepted, and we're like, okay, great. And then Jaji sent us, we waited a few weeks, and Jaji sent us the first story. It was called The Ring of Sounding Brass, and we read it, and we finished it, and we were like, oh my God, this is the same person? We reread the
Yeah.
story 2 or 3 times going, I can't believe
What
that
made her
how
think of
good the
this?
story. I couldn't
You had
believe
like
how
a
good the story was. I was like literally in shock at how good the story was. If it were up to me, I would have that nominated for all of the awards this year. So
mhm.
anybody listening, if you're looking for novelettes, I believe the length would be to nominate The Ring of Sounding
Brass.
Lamplighter.
I will just say this:
And
it's probably the same kind of feeling you get when you hear April Freeman talking on the Superversive SF podcast, and then you go read her story in Forbidden Thoughts, and you're like, "Who are you to make
yeah,
this?"
your story is very disturbing.
Yeah.
Your story is very
I just bought. I look forward to reading it now then because I just bought Forbidden Dots when I got a Kindle app.
Try not to have nightmares. Mine's a doozy.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Yeah, your
Yeah, I
story is
mean, ever
very
since
disturbing.
I realized that, I'm like, you know what? I was like, oh yay, this story's gonna get in. This if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear the whole story about how my story got in there. But I was thinking after a while, I was like, this is so great. I'm gonna get published. I'm like, but people are gonna read this, and then if they ever meet me, like, they're not gonna believe I wrote it. So I'm just bubbly and happy, but my story is like to be fair, that story is not not my normal writing style or what I tend to write. But thank you, Corey. I've been waiting for someone to say that.
Yeah, it was an experience, your story. I will definitely say
It made
that.
my little brother cry.
Wow,
But
that's
okay,
great.
from the chat, we have a question that says, has anyone read the Bloody Jack Adventures?
No, I never heard of
I
those
don't even know
actually.
what
I
that
haven't
is.
heard of them either.
Google time.
It's a
That's
question
exactly
from
what I'm doing.
Ben Rodriguez. I think that's how you say it. Hi, Ben. How are you doing today? Um, no, I haven't heard that. Corey can be on Googling Duty and see what it is. In the meantime,
It's a historical
we got
novel.
off track. Who was next to talk about their favorite stories growing up?
I'll go.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Wow, is there echo or is it just me? Are we good?
I hear stuff in the background.
I think that's from Marielle.
But I have no idea where this is coming from at this point, guys. I swear. Okay.
Mario, why do you ruin everything?
I am moving this.
Gosh, Marielle, come on. This is land here, not sea. You have to be more considerate.
I'm sorry, okay? I just traded for legs yesterday, guys.
Okay, well, is the sound fixed? I think it went away.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it-
All right, I'll
Anthony,
try
go
it.
ahead. Tell us some of your favorite stories when you were growing up.
Okay, when I was growing up, when I started out reading, I was very little. First off, I didn't learn how to read until like I think after first grade or the middle first grade. I didn't know how to read, and then suddenly it all clicked for me at one time, and I read everything. And the
Fabulous.
first series I really got into that were longer than picture books were the Hardy Boys mysteries, those chapter book
Oh, yeah,
book mysteries, and obviously they're terrible and they were clearly made to a factory standard, but I really liked them at the time. And then one day, I didn't read any fantasy, I didn't read any science fiction. If you had asked me what type of stories I liked, I would have said probably mysteries. And then one day, my mom goes and recommends I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I was like, I don't know, it's not really the type of thing I'm into. And she got it for me and said, come on, try it. So I took it and I read it. And when I started, I was blown away at the story. Like, not even so much, I had never read a story, first off, that I couldn't finish in one sitting before. So the fact that I had to stop, put it down, and pick it up later was mind blowing to me. And when I got to the end of it, and they have that twist ending at the end of book one, where it's not Snape, it's Professor Quirrell who's the villain. And
Yeah.
I had never seen anything like that before. It was like absolutely shocking. And then from that point on, I just devoured that whole series, and that is what really made me want to be a writer.
Awesome.
Otherwise, sci-fi and fantasy work I read A Wrinkle in Time, which is science fiction, but I thought it was a fantasy because of the cover. And I love that book. It's a great
Oh,
book.
yeah, that
It's a
one's
good
good.
series. It's a good series generally.
Can't believe we forgot
And
about that.
yeah, it's a good series generally. Very good book. And the first real science fiction I read intentionally was I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. It was a collection of robot stories. And that is what made me do God Robot, because I read it and I was really impressed at how good they were. They were these little, almost like puzzle mysteries where you had the three laws and you had to work out why things were malfunctioning and solving certain problems without violating the three laws of robotics. Interesting book, and that was what made me do God Robot. John C. Wright put a thing on his blog where he said, I don't think I'd use the three laws of robotics. I think I would use two laws: love God with all your might and love your neighbor as yourself. And he said, anybody who's interested in it is free to use them in a story. So I said, all right, I'll take it.
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. And that's how God Robot came to be. And John wrote a story for it that Vox Day
That's
just
true.
recommended be nominated for a Hugo on his blog.
That is really awesome. Congratulations.
Also an excellent story, An Unimaginable Light.
Yes. Well, I will just say this: that one of the characters in the science fantasy story I'm trying to write for Superversive Press. I've not read God Robot yet, but the idea of a robot who is religious and devoutly religious, that kind of struck me. So I made a robot in my story that happens to be I think Roman Catholic. Then again, I have a
Sweet.
alien who's also a Lutheran. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy all around.
God Robot, I thought it was interesting how it was received because people were looking at it like it was Christian fiction, and I didn't think of it as Christian fiction at all. It was never on my radar as a Christian fiction book. It was just something, hey, here's a cool sci-fi idea that nobody's ever really used before. Let me experiment with that. And not all of the stories are positive to the idea of religious robots or religion. Vox Day has a story in it that's actually like a horror story. And E.J.
Yeah,
Shumack, who's another superversive writer, he has a story in there that's really, it's positive towards the concept, but it's really not Christian. He doesn't mention Christianity. The religion seems to be a sort of vague, feel-goody type religion. And it's an excellent story. It's just that when people were calling it Christian fiction, and they said, for Christian fiction, it doesn't talk down to people and it's not corny. And they said, well, yeah, of course not. It's not Christian fiction. I'm like, it's just a science fiction book.
And a lot of
They're
people
just stories.
A lot of people called it like, oh, your response to Isaac Asimov. I'm just like, when we thought of this, the fact that he was an atheist, that he was like an atheist, right? It didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, he was a secular humanist.
It wasn't really a response. It was just, we liked Isaac Asimov, and this was our version of his robot stories. It was, but a lot of people would treat it as like a deconstruction, I guess, which wasn't our intention either.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. It was actually an homage to Asimov's robot stories. It was a way of showing people, we're doing the same thing that he did, but with two different laws of robotics instead. It's just a different sort of experiment, but it's the same concept as Asimov's robot stories.
Yeah.
So I, Robot was the first science fiction book I read, and the second was City Beyond Time, Tales from the Fall of Metachronopolis by John C. Wright.
Oh, really?
And yeah, brilliant book. Brilliant. Especially the first and last story, Murder in Metachronopolis and the Plural of Helen of Troy. Excellent stories. And those are what really got me interested in science fiction. Fantasy was Harry Potter. I was always into fantasy. And last up,
another Harry Potter, not survivor. What would the word be? Harry Potter.
I don't know, fan.
Oh, yeah, fan or something like that. There's a word I'm looking for, but I can't find it. I think the cat stole it, so we'll move on.
The last thing that Potterhead.
There you go.
The last thing that we're working on at the moment, God Robot was meant to be. This is my quick little spiel for anybody listening to check out Tales of the Once and Future King when it's out, because I had a theory when I wrote God Robot, and now when I did Tales of the Once and Future King. Anthologies traditionally don't sell as well as novels. Theme anthologies traditionally sell better than regular anthologies and just best stories of the year anthologies. If you do it around a theme, it will tend to sell better. Okay, so God Robot was an idea where we took these stories by 8 different authors and 10 total stories, and we connected it with a frame story with a beginning and end, and we're going to say, now there's a coherent narrative connecting everything, right? And that seemed to be received pretty well. It's got good reviews on Amazon, and I thought that it executed its concept as a sort of throwback to an earlier era of science fiction. It worked very well. But I thought through that whole idea of theme anthologies selling better than regular and anthologies not selling as well as novels. And I said, okay, what if we just combine the two, right? A novel that's also an anthology. And Tales of the Once and Future King is a super ambitious book because it's 18 different stories. So this isn't like God Robot had 10. This is 18 different stories, and instead of a brief frame story of like a couple pages just interconnecting each story, we actually plotted out in detail and wrote a full novella length, like 40,000 word story, complete with a whole new cast of characters. There's action scenes and all sorts of different things going on. And in the middle of this are individual stories by different authors. So the
Not
idea
easy.
here is to try and very, very not easy. This thing is really fun to write, but also like pulling teeth to write as we try and connect everything. I think that the end result is something that's really unique to the field that I'm not sure if I've ever seen anybody do something on this scale before. And I think that it's something that people want to keep an eye out on because it's a novel and it's an anthology and it's a fairy tale and it's sci-fi. So that's my pitch. That should hopefully
Awesome.
be coming out within a couple months. If
So keep an
we
eye
don't
out for
die.
that.
If we
Sounds
don't die
interesting.
in the meantime, yeah.
And if
Well, you
anything
better
happens
not.
to you, I will carry on the torch.
If you guys die, we're gonna have to figure out a way to bring you back to finish that, because we all know if we die before we finish our stories, our characters will come alive and haunt us, and we'll become ghosts until we haunt some other young writer to get them to finish our story.
All right, so that's the
Rest in
plot of
peace.
my next novel.
No, that one's mine.
And
You can't steal my idea, or you can steal it, but you have to do it well.
Differently.
Fair. Fair.
We're authors. We steal ideas from each other all the time. Just look what John does.
I
But also,
stole-
no, the thing is, you can steal
I
an
crib
idea, but you have
ideas
to
from
steal
John.
2 ideas at once from 2 different people and weave it into your own.
That's 2. I just steal like 2 or 3 dozen at a time, so no one can tell. Oh, this isn't just a
Yeah,
blatant
just mix
plagiarization.
them all together.
It's a horrendous amalgamation.
Yeah,
It's
there's
an
a phrase.
unholy
You
abomination.
can never come up with something new. There's always everything has already been done. So just take the best of what's been done and mash it up into something.
Steal creatively. That's our motto.
Yes, there we go.
That's
The
a good
mermaid
motto.
has
I like it.
spoken.
Steal
Speaking
creatively.
mermaid, it's your turn. We don't want you to be late for work, so you can have your turn to chat.
Awesome. Actually, thinking about it, I think, and this is an interesting story. At least I think it's kind of funny. In school, I was I also read a lot of nonfiction before I read regular fiction. And in middle school, especially, I would pick up a bunch of nonfiction books in the library, but I didn't really have a specific taste. I just picked up like anything. And in one of my classes, there was this teacher that had a student that sat right next to me. See what I would be reading. And there was this one day that I was reading a book about reforming the prison system, and I still don't know why. And she looked at it, and she looked at me real strange, and she was like, Mario, why are you reading that? That's so weird. And I was in like 8th grade. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to read, so I just picked this up. And later that day, she came into my class, and she handed me a copy of The Hunger Games, and she was like, this is what people your age should be reading. Go read this. So the first science fiction novel I ever really read was The Hunger Games, actually. First fantasy I ever read, I was in middle school. I read Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I guess you could say it was like my Harry Potter, since I didn't read that until high school.
Yeah.
To be honest, looking back on it, I wish I had a better gateway novel than The Hunger Games. To be honest,
Hunger Games is okay, but there's definitely better out there.
Ariel,
Yeah,
you never read A Wrinkle in Time?
not in full, no.
I listen to it. I listen to audiobooks all the
It
time.
was
I'll
a
get
lot
into
of
that when I
fun
get.
listening to you talk about it, though. That was fun.
Yeah. Wonderful book.
Yeah.
You go.
When I was really young, I was also really into when I was really young, I was really into the fairy tale deconstruction things. I remember my favorite book when I was a kid was Ella Enchanted. And then I reread it now, and hindsight, I'm like, not as good as I remember that.
Yeah.
Clever as I remembered.
The Hunger Games is an interesting book. The Hunger Games, originally read it, I thought that was pretty good. And now, as the series went on, first off, the rest of the books in the series are pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Movie of the second book's good, though.
Movie of the second book is okay, but the first book in the Hunger Games is not a terrible book, but in retrospect, when I look back on it, it just looks to me like a huge missed opportunity, really fascinating premise. Somebody who's going to be put in a
Whose sound is
crucible.
that? Mermaid. Are the fish singing again? Please silence the sea creatures.
Oh my. Okay, let me. Well, we're on the same floor of the house, so I don't know why there's noise here, but not with him.
It's because you're a mermaid.
Okay.
Good explanation.
Might be a microphone.
Why? You're a
Try to turn the
mermaid.
gain down ever so slightly. That might do it.
I don't know.
All good?
I like April's.
I
You're a
think so.
mermaid. That's why. Can't fix it.
All right, so Hunger Games. I think
Too late.
you were talking about this on the email, weren't you, Anthony? Because I think I remember you talking about the Hunger
Went
Games.
through because it took me a while, and I remember to think of this, and I read a review of it, and somebody pointed out a few of the problems, and it finally kind of clicked that was it. It was this idea that she has all of this potential to put Katniss through these moral dilemmas, to put her through almost like the movie Saw, where they need to do these horrible things or else they die.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a torture chamber, right? Something kind of like that, but on a moral level, where like she has this friend, Rue, who in the book dies, and Katniss sings to her. And the thing that was the potential there is that she becomes friendly with this little girl, and they forge this relationship. Except they're in a Hunger Games kill arena of death, and like if you reach the end of the game, one of those two needs to die. So they never actually bring that up as a conflict. Like, what if she needs to kill the little girl? What if they're the only two people left? And that never comes up. And then another person spares her life because she helps the little girl. Well, what if he spares her life and then later on he decides he's going to kill her in revenge and she doesn't want to hurt him because she was friends with the little girl? And you have all these sorts of different potential scenarios, but she never really follows through on any of them. And Katniss gets through the arena more or less unscathed morally, but at the same time, never actually having to test, never having any real tests of her moral fiber. And it could have been something that was really interesting and disturbing and powerful, and she doesn't go through with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have a chat talking about the trend of dystopian novels, like Hunger Games and Hunger Games 2, the Divergent series.
Yeah.
Divergent series.
I have not
Hunger
read that.
Games.
I do not.
I've
want
read
to.
I listened to the first one, and everyone said the rest of the books were just horrible, and all the characters died, and it was really sad. So
The first one was okay.
the first movie.
Yeah. I didn't see the second.
Watched the second movie. My little brother was actually an extra in the second movie, but I don't know. Have they done? Yeah, yeah. Down here in Georgia, there was a lot of filming going on. So, do you guys remember the movie The Duff? Did you?
Vaguely.
That was a couple years ago. I never saw it, but I saw some commercials. My brother and his now wife spent a week being an extra in that movie, and they were like the goth kids or something. They got to sit next to a table next to the Bella Rose, whoever that person is. But yeah, we'll definitely have to have a chat talking about the popular trends and maybe compare it to other kind of stories like that from decades ago. I think that would be fun. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
I think that's an interesting topic, definitely.
Yeah, we'll have to plan that out.
I think there's a lot we could say about that.
Mermaid, Mariel.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about on your turn.
Oh, I also remember reading in 8th grade, and I feel really guilty because I actually think I read this before I read most of any of the Narnia books. When I was in 8th grade, I was in like an advanced reading group in my class, and they made us read The Golden Compass, and I was too young to understand that it was basically an anti-Narnia. I was just like, polar bears, that's really cool. So I read. So I remember really liking it because I loved animals, and it had animal familiars, and it had bears. And I didn't realize as I was reading it. And then I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I was like, so familiar. And then I learned later it was because The Golden Compass was really, literally written to be an anti-Narnia.
Yeah, I remember I was pretty young when that came out, and I think I saw some commercial or like a a little stack of it in Barnes and Nobles, and Mom was like, "Nah, that's not a good one to read." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember. I actually called home because my mom wouldn't said I didn't want me to see the movie, so I literally called home. And I was like, "Mom, am I allowed to read The Golden Compass?" And he was just like, well, "For school, as long as you
Yeah.
know that we."
I'm
As long
so
as you
glad I
know-
never went to school.
You can be.
Yeah, you're lucky. You're definitely lucky.
Granted, yeah, it's some of it's
I
tough.
am lucky.
Especially
I
college.
think
Ugh.
Glad I'm not going to
off the
college yet either.
topic,
I just
this
won't
is off
school
the
at all. I'll
topic,
just
so-
write books.
Yeah, why not?
I'll write books and read other books and find. I don't know. We'll
Off
see.
of the
We'll see
topic,
how.
so I'm not
it goes.
going to go into my full rant, but I think that the free-based public school system is an absolute joke and a disaster. So
Yep.
Yeah, I
I
mean
sadly
it's been going
agree,
on
and
for
I'm
what
going to be a
150
teacher.
years, but it's yeah.
since the death
There's
of the one-room schoolhouse, that's really what killed it. And then they brought
Yeah.
in people from Europe who tried to create schools that were literally just government brainwashing facilities. And then
so
everybody
get
just
everyone
kind of
good at
forgot
working on
that
the
was why.
working in factories. Yeah, me and my brother are actually talking about that on the way to church this morning. We'll have that's a yeah like we shouldn't
That's
get
the
on too
time
many
for the
rabbit trails.
future. That's
We should
not,
talk.
I guess I'll
yeah.
We should talk about like reading, like the public school reading lists as a different topic. 'Cause
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah.
Actually,
I
I'm
didn't
gonna
hate
write
all of them.
down. We have.
didn't
Let me
hate
write down
all
those
of
ideas so
them.
I don't forget. So we'll have to talk about the dystopian stories of nowadays, and we'll have to talk about school reading lists. That's a good one.
And
public, yeah, public-
Miyazaki.
Okay.
I'm going to keep pushing that because I'm
Yeah,
watching his.
I just watched Castle
I'm
in the
watching
Sky.
his
I have
whole
so much
oeuvre,
to say.
whatever you want to call it, right now, and he's amazing. And I've never seen anything like him before. And we are talking about it. I will figure out a way to do it.
Oh, trust me, we will. I have Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind waiting to be watched tonight because it's due.
I watched My
like,
Neighbor
12.
Totoro last night. Just
I should get that too.
it's
I am not sure. I don't even know which of those I've watched yet. Probably maybe one, if any. So I need to catch up.
yeah. I've started going through his whole body of work, and it, like I said, there's going to be another show on this eventually, so I don't want to go too into it, but I'm going to say I don't think there's anybody like him out there. I've never seen somebody do
Maybe the
movies
original
like his or
Walt
the
Disney.
worldview like his. Even him, though, like, there's a sort of assumed optimism in Miyazaki stuff that I don't know if I've seen replicated before. I guess maybe like Snow White, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't
Like
even know
older
if they've
Disney.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's done it that well, though, like as Miyazaki did in, say, Castle in the Sky is such an optimistic movie, just how everybody throws themselves into life, but that's a whole other time.
All right,
stop now.
Yeah, we'll
I can keep going.
talk about.
It's about time I have to leave for work, but I just want to add one thing to that, and then I'm gonna have to go. But I think Castle in the Sky is like, I've always been into superversive, but I think after Anthony showed me that movie, I literally turned to him and I was like, I totally understand exactly what you mean now.
Wonderful. You're one of us.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Miyazaki converted her.
Well, it wasn't like I was totally not in here before that, but yeah, pretty much.
You had a superversive moment where you understood what the superversive moment is about.
The clouds were parted. The light
And the ray of
showed
light
the
shone
sea.
down.
That's a
On
good
the sea.
discussion point. What got us all? What made us all realize that superversive was something that we needed? That's actually a really interesting discussion point. Because for my
I'll write that
sister, we
down.
have that. It's Castle in the Sky.
And I'll see you guys. It was so great to talk to you all.
It was wonderful to have you. See you later, mermaid.
To you.
See ya, Cheer Weasel.
Squeak. I have a
Okay,
7-foot long cheer weasel I made. If anyone loves the Crossrow books, just know I am the official leader of the cheer team. I hand knitted and hand fluffed a 7-foot long cheer weasel scarf.
Okay then.
Just saying. Anyway, I guess it's my turn then. I've claimed that title of the Jaje's told me I'm the #1 fan of the Prospero series, so I am holding on to that. Um, but anyway, you guys can still be fans too. But okay, I guess it's my turn though for talking about what I read when I was little. So, um, first thing you should know is I have you all beat. I could not read until I was 10.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And it's the thing is with me, it's not like I didn't want to read. I grew up in a household where we read stories, and I'd also get audiobooks from the library and listen to the stories, and I really wanted to read. Something in my brain did not click for a while until I could really figure out how to process the words and read on my own. I'm pretty bad at reading still sometimes. Novel, a 400-page novel in a night like my brother can. Um, and I'm not that great at reading out loud, but I can read sufficiently, I think. So I loved reading, but I have almost a decade of where I would listen to other people read, or whether it be my parents or an audiobook. And when I actually started reading, I think one of the first book I remember one time, The Series of Unfortunate Events. My neighbor,
Yeah.
he had just started reading it, and my brother had torn through them. The one that can read, like, I think he has gamma radiation or something. Jubal can read like nobody's business. And I was talking to my friend Daniel, and he said he had just started reading it, and I was like, I want to beat Daniel. I want to read it before he finishes. So I sat down with the book and tried really hard for I don't know how long to try and read, and I think I got to like one page, and I was so proud of myself. But once I started reading, I read things like the series of unfortunate events, which was just really fun. Kind of a
Love that series.
series of unfortunate events. Sorry if I'm talking
Yeah.
too fast. You can
No,
slow me
no, I
down.
said I love that series. It's a great series.
It has a
Yeah,
very
it's
odd
it's
sense of humor to it.
Very not
it's
super
so
versive,
funny
but a
because
really
it's a
fun
kid's
series.
book, but the way the narrator narrates it, and I
He
don't
wrote
know,
a
it wouldn't.
sequel series or a prequel series called All the
Oh,
Wrong Questions, which I very
yes, we
highly
have that too.
recommend. Very highly
Yes, I
recommend that
haven't read
I've
that
series.
never
yet.
heard of it,
We
so I have
have
to
it. I
go
haven't
read
read it
that.
yet.
The final book in that series is a terrific book, probably the best book he's ever written. I
Yeah, I'll have to read
definitely
that at some
recommend
point.
it.
We have them sitting on
Very
our
not
shelf. It
suit.
has all the unfortunate events, that one, and we also have
Yeah.
the oh gosh, what's it called? The Secret series. I think that's what it is. The first book is if you're reading this book, it's too late. I think it's under a different
No,
name,
the
but
first book is the name
I'm
of the
The
pretty
series.
name
sure
of
that's
this
by
book
Lemony
is
Snicket.
Secret.
If you're reading this,
The name of
Yes.
this book is That's not Lemony
The name.
Snicket, but it was one of the Lemony Snicket ripoffs that came out after a series of
I
unfortunate events hit it big. The name of this book is Secret was one of those books that capitalized on popularity.
I like that book.
I think it was a lot of fun.
I
I
mean, it
mean,
doesn't mean
sure,
it's a bad.
yeah.
I don't know.
It played
It
off
doesn't
that
mean
same
it's a
kind of
bad
theme.
book.
I don't know what genre exactly would its books be because they're not
Postmodern
exactly
Gothic.
fantasy. Gothic?
Postmodern Gothic.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not. Look,
Those.
they're not subversive. They're not subversive at all, but they're very fun.
Yeah, and especially it's really funny because they're kids' books. They're so post-gothic, but hilarious at the same time. Very entertaining. So that was one of the. Oh, me and I love that story so much. Me and my two neighbors, we'd have a game where I would be Sunny, Daniel would be Klaus, and my friend Lauren would be Violet, and we'd get a backpack, put some wooden blocks for me to chew on, some books for Klaus to read, and some random stuff to invent, and we'd just go around their yard and we would fight the imaginary Olaf and before
Yeah.
computers, before all those kids had Snapchat, we would just go in the yard and be kicked out of the house and play for hours in imaginary games, being the Baudelaire kids. And one time I got locked in their car and set off the car alarm. That was fun, but
That is
that was one.
series of unfortunate events is not the first one I would think of. Hey, let's imagine we're in that world.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Let's see, and so I read that one. I remember reading one of the first stories I read once I could read by myself. It was a story about a unicorn. It was like the last. It wasn't the last unicorn.
The Last Unicorn.
It wasn't that one. It was a different one. Um, but it had something to do with a unicorn and a girl and she had a magical amulet and she fell into that world. And so that was very fantasy. And I can't remember it exactly. I'd have to look it up and find it.
I don't know
I
the
read the
name.
first two. I don't know if I ever read the last one, but that was definitely fantasy, and I loved it. And I thought it was cool, and there was magic and cool characters and unicorns. So that was one thing that I had been listening to fantasy stuff even when I was younger. Things like Narnia. We read Narnia. I need to reread it though. I can't. I think we only read like the first couple.
Well, I read
Mom did to us.
I had read the whole series when I was little, and I didn't really get it, and I thought it was overrated, and I didn't understand why everybody loved it. And then I reread it in high school, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is one of the most brilliant things I've ever read. And I actually loved it so much then I gave a whole presentation for like a final project on the last battle in college. And
someone just
brilliant book.
So in the chat, Scholar at Arms just said Into the Land of the Unicorns. Yes, that was the book.
I think the second book, if I remember it correctly, is called like Song of the Wanderer or something, because I think my mom actually liked that series.
Song of the Wanderer.
It was fun. I remember it very fondly. I don't know if I ever read the last one because I think I left off where the unicorn was actually a human and they were going to have to travel back to Earth or something like that.
This is the series I was thinking
of it. Yes. So that one, and I had a lot of fun with that one. So that definitely gave me a fond feeling of unicorns and imaginary fantasy things. Another series I liked growing up was Artemis Fowl. Now, the writing,
the original Artemis Fowl trilogy is spectacular.
Yes.
The first three books.
But then there's things, as it goes on, though, I mean, it's great, but as it goes on, you have things like, in one book, a new character is introduced. This girl, another super smart genius girl, and there's so many opportunities for funny stuff between her and Artemis, and even at the end of the book, it mentions that she's still around hanging out with Buck's book. Nothing.
Yeah,
and the next book, she's never mentioned again.
Yeah. I think she's mentioned in a later book.
I don't think she is.
No. I
might not remember.
I'm pretty sure
he completely dropped her. I've read all of them. She's completely dropped from the face of that universe.
I will just say this: my one of my teachers in 4th grade got me a bunch of books. She picked them out specifically because she thought I would be interested in them, and included in them was H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds and Artemis Fowl's The Eternity Code.
The Eternity Code is the best book in the series.
Which was the first one.
I love
the Eternity Code. That's the one where he accidentally sells the fairy technology, right?
Yeah, you get
no,
to
wait, no.
Get to
I have that whole book memorized, man. He sells it to John Zero.
Yes, has to go break it back in.
They need to break in. It's a big heist novel.
Yeah.
So much
And there's those two goons. I like the scene where Mulch is talking to the two goons.
And
Pex and Chips. You want to know why they call me Pex?
Yeah. I remember that scene. I love that scene.
Yeah.
Because
that one was really fun.
I think he goes like, I don't know, is it short for Francis? And then he's like, what?
Yeah, I just love the part where he's arguing for them to bury him alive, and they're like, shouldn't he be arguing, against that?
Yeah, but he's a
tunneling dwarf, so he's perfectly fine being buried alive.
Yeah,
he can tunnel.
Yeah.
I always thought Holly was cool and Artemis was fun. It's a really fun cast. So that was another series that I loved listening and reading to. In some of the later books, there's some like inconsistencies. Like I think it was said Mole can't burp, but then later in another book he burps or they drop a character. And the first 3 books are definitely the best.
It should have ended at the end of book 3. The 3rd book had this bittersweet ending where and it really should have ended there. I understand why he didn't, but I think that would have been the much braver choice, as if he ended it after the Eternity Code. natural stopping point of the series.
Mhm.
And then he kept it going, and it was
I mean, I
never as
kind of
good
like-
after that.
Yeah, it really
It was
wasn't.
still pretty. It was still pretty good
It
compared
had
to
its
Yeah.
the other
moments.
stuff.
It had its moments,
Yeah.
no
I
question.
like the Youthful Deception right afterwards, the fourth book, but
But I really like the Time Paradox.
Yeah, that one was
That's a
fun.
good book, but it
That
wasn't
was-
as good as the original trilogy.
The
Yeah,
one
I think I
where they
remember that
travel
one.
in time gets a bit
Yeah.
derpy.
to get
That
he
was a
like
fun
visits his younger self or something to get a lemur, I
lemur.
think. Yeah.
Yes.
And then also he ends up kissing Holly too. And see,
Wha-
and then in
That's-
the second to last one, the one where they're in Antarctica and he has a split personality disorder.
Terrible.
This is the point
Sorry.
where I wish they had Miranda. That one was probably my least favorite. But
It-
that's the
it
point
was
where they should
enough.
have had Minerva around because there were so many opportunities. If they just had Minerva around, it could be even so much more funny.
Even The Last Guardian, it was not a bad book. It was actually, as far as an ending
don't
goes,
tell
it
me
was a
that one.
solid.
I've actually never read that one, so
It's a solid
I finally got
ending.
around to reading it a while ago.
I'll mention, since Corey hasn't read it, I will mention as non-spoilery as possible. There is even a moment in there that's kind of inconsistent with the series. There's a line, and I remember this very well because it made me raise my eyebrows when I read it. In the Demon book, The Lost Colony, Butler says something after Artemis disappears to go to the demon world that he doesn't go to the bathroom without a backup. Artemis is always super prepared and has a plan B. And then in The Last Guardian, there's a line where Holly says something like Artemis's biggest weakness is that he always assumes that he's going to be successful, so he doesn't have a plan B. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's the opposite of what they said
Yeah.
earlier. That's not true. He
It's
always has a backup.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one thing if it's little details about the world that, like, say in the Dragonstone Files, where it's a huge series that you've written over many years, there's little inconsistencies. But if it's something about the character,
Yeah,
that's harder.
It's not a bad book. It's a
Forgiven
pretty
for.
good book. I think it ends well. It has its
Yeah,
moments,
it's still fun.
but his best book is Airman, which is a
Good.
spectacular book, and not enough people have read it or heard of it.
Airman, is that
My
the one?
brothers
where-
have listened to
Airman.
it. I haven't
Airman
listened to it
is
yet.
a great book. It's
I
one of
think-
my
I think
favorite.
I read that one.
It is one of
Airman.
my favorite books, Airman.
I like
that is Owen Colfer's best book.
Did you read the other one? He wrote like a kind of almost like a, not a cyberpunk, but like a kind of.
The Supernaturalists.
Yes, that one.
Love that book
Have you read
too.
that?
I'm a Colfer fan. I mean, I've read a lot of his stuff. I liked that book. I liked The Wish List, even though it was kind of predictable, but it was a good book.
Yeah. I like that too. That was an interesting one.
It was interesting. I could predict pretty much all of the plot beats as I read it, but he handled it pretty well. You know, it was not a bad book. Airman was his best book, I think. Yeah, I'm a
I
Colfer
remember
fan.
reading it.
The
so.
one thing that he wrote that I really, really didn't like was his new Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide book, which I'm sorry was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah.
He was trying to pretend to be Douglas Adams, and nobody can be.
Yeah, if he
It was
wrote,
just a bad
We
book.
have some more questions from the chat, by the way. Ben is
Awesome.
asking, is anyone familiar with Incancarnon? Or Ben, why are you giving me these funny things to read? I just told you I cannot read.
wait, what was it?
It's in the chat over here. I cannot.
I can't.
Here,
I
I'll
can't see
copy
the chat, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Here.
we can't see the chat.
Let me bring it
Hold
over
on.
here. 1 second. Here you go.
Yes, I've read the first one, Incarceron. I have. That was actually kind of
Incarceron?
interesting. Yes.
I've never
What's the
heard of
second
that
one?
series.
Safik? Safik.
Yes, it's the name of a character, and I have not read book 2 because if it's a series like I haven't touched for over a year or so, I'd like to reread book 1. But the basic idea is Incarceron is it's basically like an unbreakable prison because the prison is self-aware, and there's like a completely metal world inside it. It's interesting, a bit odd, but interesting. The other ones you've put up there, I haven't seen it before. I don't know about Anthony though.
I've never heard of Incarceron. That's
Me neither.
That is the first I've heard of that book.
There's also Rosemound,
Huh.
Hedges, Cruel Beauty, and Crimson Bond. Heard of those ones
Also,
before?
no, I have not.
Oh.
Current of those young adult fantasy books, honestly, I was so into Harry Potter, I didn't really read a lot of others. I mean, as far
read
as those young adult books go, I really liked. You know what I liked? That's not sci-fi or fantasy at all, and that is totally at odds with everything else I read and like. Sarah
What?
Plain and Tall.
You're fading away.
The Sarah Plain and
There you
Tall
are.
series was really, really fun.
I haven't heard of it.
It's
Like Pioneer books. And
I've
I
never
Oh,
read
Pioneer.
them as much.
And they're not sci-fi or fantasy at all, and there's really like very little action to them, and I think they're very good books, and like they're so
That's
different
cool.
from anything else I read. But
I will
I recommend
I will
them.
say this
It's
as a piece of
interesting.
fiction I have consumed, not a book per se, but something I think might have had a bit of a touch on my writing style and just some of the stuff I write about. It's a series that actually is a cartoon series that my mom liked. Like, I was a fan of it, my brother was a fan of it, and my mom was a fan of it. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, great,
Yes.
great show.
Yes.
Honestly, like
Great show.
that was, and I'm a huge fan of it because it was that's actually one of the things I saw a while back. It was like Patrick Rothfuss and Jim Butcher and a bunch of other authors were on a panel talking about magic systems, and they all agreed that the best magic system they've ever seen was the one from Avatar: The Last Airbender, because simple rules, simple execution, very few exceptions. You don't need a giant chart like you need for something written by Brandon Sanderson, who I love, by the way, but some of this stuff is really complicated. And it was just it was a fun series.
Very, very good show. Didn't like Korra.
A lot.
Was
Yeah,
not
a
a
lot
fan
of fun.
Korra.
Yeah.
Korra I did not like, but the original Last Airbender was fantastic.
I think with Korra, the issue that it had there, regardless of what happened with the last episode, was that it didn't have the unified storyline. Where with Avatar, it was 3 seasons, Earth and Fire, and at the end of it, they had to do it before they had to stop the Fire Lord before he basically destroyed
It was
the
a
world.
very straightforward plot,
Right.
but it provided a very strong through line.
Korra
Yeah.
had an overarching plot. Korra had it had a different villain to end the world with each season, which kind of made it. I mean, season 3 when it had the bending team that was like trying to kill all the world leaders and stuff, that was kind of interesting, but even then it wasn't as concise.
I think the problem is to me, it's even more obvious. There were really very few really likable characters. I mean, Korra, I just hated. And I still hate Korra. Korra's a terrible character. She's a bad person. She's annoying. And
Oh my
I
gosh, you're
thought
so
that
mean.
the weirdest thing about Korra that I thought is she
I
was
think it's
supposedly
Katana.
like, Aang. No, it was Korra. It was Korra.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Always said her
What's
name.
that?
Korra.
Oh wait, or is
The
it?
thing about Korra that I really didn't like, that I thought was weird too, was that they were clearly going for a dichotomy where Aang was very spiritually strong and Korra was very physically powerful. As I look back at the series, Aang was way more powerful than her. All
It was
4
like
bending arts in like 3 months or something ludicrous like that.
You're
And
cutting off.
Korra,
Are you still there,
yeah,
me.
Anthony?
Oh,
Aang, yeah, like Aang masters all of the bending arts within like 3 months, and it takes Korra forever to master airbending. And Aang masters earthbending in like what, a month? He has with Toph, and that's supposedly the one that's going to give him the most trouble. And I always thought it was really odd that we're like, but Korra is so much more physically powerful. And I'm like, not really. She's lame.
As to the question that you
Yeah,
had, Earthsea, the Earthsea books, I got a copy of the original trilogy by Ursula K. Le Guin from my gifted teacher in middle school, and I really liked it. I actually only read the first two because life kind of caught up with me, and it was one of the books I didn't accidentally steal, where I just kind of forgot to return it and then never returned to that class. But it was that's like I got 3 or 4 books that way, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that.
going. I don't think I actually ever watched it in order. I don't know how many of them I've watched. I think we just found them on Netflix or YouTube and would watch random ones. I think the last time I watched it was I was having to stay and keep an eye on my grandma while Grandpa was in Virginia watching TV, and that came on, and she laughed a lot at that, so we had fun watching that together. That was the last time I've watched it. Okay,
yeah.
so did we miss any questions from the chat? Let me look real quick. Hello, everyone. I think we have like 14
Hi.
people listening.
Wow.
Hi.
That's
Hello.
more than I thought. I figured we'd have like 2 people watching, and they would be people we knew pity watching.
Well, we had
my
10, I
family.
think, when we started, and it's gotten a few more. So I think we've gotten to most of our points. People in the peanut gallery, any
Actually, there
more
is something
questions
else
for
we
us,
forgot.
whippersnappers?
We didn't get to one point, which was what are you looking forward to reading of older works that you haven't yet?
Ah, yes, that was the last point that we were going to talk about.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
we'll take
yeah.
a second and see. Let me check through the chat, make sure we didn't miss any questions. So now is your time if you want to ask us a book or something like that while I scan through. And then, yeah, we'll talk about what we're looking forward to next. Now, oh, I got something. On John's blog, he has a list of 50 books every science fiction author should read. And there's 4 or 5 here of like the must reads. So we'll read those and see who has read what of those ones.
Yeah, I've bookmarked that on my phone, and my library, which is one of the
John C. Wright's list?
Yeah.
Yes. My library.
Yeah.
He sent that to me last night.
Oh.
I've read a few of them.
Yeah. One of the
I need to read more.
One of the perks of
You know
going to
something? My
college.
big secret shame is that I have a really, really hard time reading older stuff. Like, I can't do it. I've tried reading the Iliad. I've tried reading the Iliad, the Odyssey, which everybody like are these big war epics, and I just had to stop. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't read this thing. I'm like, I'm sure it's genius, and it's one of the great works of the Western canon, and it's amazing and all of that, but I cannot read this poem book thing. And I have a similar thing. I'm trying to read Le Morte Arthur, like pulling teeth. I can't do it. I'm getting through it super, super slowly.
It's something you have to do. You just have to kind of keep reading. And actually, that's one of the things that I really like about being in college. I may say that some of the stuff that I'm learning in college seems a bit crazy, but A, I've actually found uses for it in some of my science fiction and especially some of my science fantasy stories. And B, I have access to interlibrary loans. I have access to, if I want to, every single library in the nation, every single college library in the nation I can rent a book out from.
Sweet.
Which is already building on the fact
cool.
that the library at the college I go to has 3 million books that I can just access on a whim without, well, some of them are like special collection books. I'm like, I walked in there on orientation day and I looked around and I'm like, I died and went to heaven. Because
Same.
There's barely anything on the first floor, but then there's 2 floors, 2 very large floors, just full of books.
Sounds amazing.
It is. It's like it's crack for me, basically. A good book
Oh,
is
I actually
is
wrote
the
it. I wrote a
equivalent of
blog
cocaine
article one time
for me.
about why stories are better than drugs. Oh, that that
I
was.
feel like it's
I'll
one of
find it.
those
Let me find it
things.
real.
I feel like that's a dare program where you go like, you know what's cool? Stories. You know what's not cool? Drugs.
I wrote a lot.
Story.
No, I wrote out all these points on why I don't need drugs. I'll have
I've
to
had
let me
people
look it
ask
up.
me that
I'll
actually. Like,
post it in
what are
the
you
chat
smoking
real
to
quick
come up
for
with
anyone who's
this?
interested.
Yeah. Someone asked me that. I was like, "Are you smoking something to come up with this?" I'm like, "No, I just read a lot." Like half of the stuff is if all you read is Junie B. Jones and like these angsty teen novels about some teen committing suicide or something, which I know it's tragic, but it's not really things you should fill your life with, and it's other angsty stories about gossip drama. It's going to be kind of hard to come up with ideas. Now, when all you're reading is Lord of the Rings, Dune, Narnia, the Earthsea someone mentioned, it's much easier to come up with these crazy ideas because if you think outside the box, for you the box is really really big to begin with, so you have to go out there to think outside of it.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty.
I mean, it all depends on the base that you're working from.
Yeah,
I
but
definitely like more fascinating, big stories. Yeah, angsty stories or things like that. There's another. I mean, they're fun, like the fun, more urban, I guess, just regular fiction stories, but they're not the same as unicorns and
I never got into
Death
that.
Stars and
No.
everything like that.
Yeah.
That's just
All
so
of them
much
are
bigger.
bad.
Like
I'll be fair here. There are definitely some good examples of non-genre works. I am a mega huge Flannery O'Connor fan.
Oh
Who
yes.
I've heard good things about her.
I think she's the greatest short story writer of all time. But she's
I've heard
kind of
that.
I
on
got
the
my
cusp.
brother a collection of her works for his birthday one time.
Yeah, she's one of those people who's almost like, one of us, because I've read some lectures by her, and she talks about how the literati and the establishment never appreciated her works and whatever. And sometimes she gets some flack for being unrealistic, but I think that the story A Good Man is Hard to Find is probably the best short story ever written. And I don't know if you could exactly call it superversive, but it's definitely something where there is a moment of grace at the end of something super dark. Like, for people who don't know the plot of the story, it's an escaped fugitive who literally shoots out the tires on a car, and then when they crash, kills the entire family execution style in the background.
Yeesh.
While
Yeah.
they're casually chatting with the grandmother. And it's a story that, like, then you're going to say it's an uplifting story. And then you go, what? That's the whole story. But it is the way it ends and how
I will have to get
those
around to reading
themes
that.
that it addresses.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
read a couple of
it's
hers in there, but I haven't read them all yet.
But
funny and it's dark.
Definitely. She has, as far as, I mean, I tried to write a short story for you, Anthony, and it wasn't so short. But
Yeah.
can really draw out a tale. It's really amazing.
like
Definitely an excellent short story writer.
of classic works, I've heard of her, but another person who doesn't really write terribly fantastic literature, in fantastic in the sense of involving fantasy, not
sci-fi.
quality, not and nothing to do with quality. William Faulkner. I really liked him when I read it.
Of his
His
short
stuff.
stories. I liked Barn Burning. I remember when I read it, I thought was pretty good. There was one other thing by him I read that was a short story that I thought was decent.
It was. I got introduced to him for my 12th grade Western literature course, and that course was like half of it was really really good stuff, and the other half of it made me want to like take out my eyes with it all, basically. There was like I was reading we were reading Faulkner. We each got one of the Canterbury Tales, which I can recite the first few lines in the original Middle English, thanks to my teacher LT, and Hamlet, which is arguably my favorite Shakespeare play. And then we had to
am
read
a Shakespeare fan. That's my exception regarding older language. I'm one of those
Yes.
people. I'm weird enough that I actually bought tickets and sat alone to see a production of Macbeth. And I was
cool.
there were obviously other people in the theater, but I mean, I didn't go with anyone. I bought the tickets and went to see it by myself, and I have no regrets.
Sometimes it's nice to take yourself out.
Yeah. It was a good shout. Oh, sorry. The other books that we read were there's one called The Awakening, which I'd describe that as Marriage According to Gloria Steinem, and I wrote a very long. Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not the only one who thought that. There were 3 people in my class of like 25, 3 people who actually liked it. One other person who could stomach it. Everyone else was like, "This is terrible," because I would be very sympathetic to a woman if she was trapped in a loveless marriage, and it like maybe she made a few mistakes, but she was in over her head. Then you have this woman who is trapped in a loveless marriage. So instead of, trying to either get out of said loveless marriage or reconcile with her husband, who wasn't abusive, who wasn't mean, just kind of indifferent, she ends up like going from a suffering woman to basically this nasty teenager, and does everything from like smashing things, stomping on her wedding ring, and then at one point she ends up buying a house in New Orleans, because that's where
That's Kate Chopin, right?
Yes.
Kate Chopin. Oh, she's
in New Orleans.
Yeah, I have very mean things to say about her, so I'm going to refrain. But
yes,
she's a terrible writer.
I will say
she's like anti-superversive.
Yeah, the prose is all right, and then she's just what she writes about is terrible. Also,
yeah, prose is fine, but
interesting discussion. Yes, I'm reading the Dying Earth books, by the way, April.
I'm in the middle of them too.
Yes.
I don't think I have.
Well, I will just say this. I have not been so thrilled by a description of a plant as I was when I started reading the first story, and it was describing this wizard's garden, and I'm like, this is fascinating. This is awesome. And I'm like, wait, hold on. This is just a description of the scenery. It doesn't even have anything to do with the plot.
Yeah, Jack Vance is a very interesting writer. I will say
I'll definitely have to. I'll have to catch up on that. Maybe we'll talk about that one. That sounds
definitely fun. The Dying Earth series. I have the Tales of the Dying Earth. It's like a $10 ebook, I think, and it has a bunch of like actual novels by him, and then the Dying Earth, which is I think a bunch of short stories. And
I believe John actually has a story in there. I think we have.
No, this is all just by Jack Vance.
Okay,
yeah, this is all his
else.
original work. This is No, you're thinking of the Nightland, possibly.
No, there's a certain, maybe it's something about Dying Earth or Dying Sun. I know there's some anthology that John was in that we have around here somewhere. I must be thinking something else.
Because my first thought is the Last of All Suns, but that's Nightland. That's not. That's a different thing.
But
are you guys done with your ramble?
Oh yeah. I'm not going to the Awakening. Otherwise, we'll be here for a good 3 hours.
Yeah. So let's move on to our last point.
We should just have a bash Kate Chopin day, and we could just spend the whole.
We'll have a whole episode. You guys, I'll just hit start and let you guys go. I'll take a nap and wake up 5 hours later.
Who's that terrible? You know who's terrible? Kate Chopin.
Yeah.
And then that's the.
We'll save that for another.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Okay. So our last point was about what we're looking forward to reading to next. Like some sort of older what we're looking forward to reading next in science fiction.
Well, I will begin by saying I got a few of the books of Appendix N from. I got one for my birthday, which is actually below my bed. It is the collected works of the Amber Chronicles by Roger Zelazny, which is like the prose is the exact opposite of Jack Vance, where Jack Vance will spend a paragraph lovingly describing one type of bush, and you're still thrilled through it. You miss a sentence of Roger Zelazny's prose, and you could have missed a crucial plot point. It is very, very interesting. I have his. I just finished Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which, if you've not read anything by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which this is the first thing I've read by him, go read this because it's just fun. And that's I'm looking forward to exploring some of the old Appendix N stuff.
All right, that's cool.
I mean, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, but judging from what I've read of it so far,
it's fun.
I am quite a fan.
Coolio. So, Anthony, what are you looking forward to reading?
Well, I started Jack Vance's Dying Earth series, his Tales from the Dying Earth, and I kind of stopped with that, but I want to continue reading that. As far as the older stuff goes, so I'm writing Arthurian fiction. I feel obligated that I'm going to force myself to do it. Day Arthur. It's got to happen. If you write Arthurian fiction, you can't not read it.
Yeah, when I wrote a little Arthurian, my little Arthurian, how do you say that?
Arthurian.
That word. I looked up some sort. I think I had a couple on here, and I looked up some stuff. Definitely get
my big influences were.
I've got my Kindle.
T.H. White's The Once and Future King, a beautiful, brilliant book, and The Ill-Named Night is the second best book ever written, second best fantasy book ever written to The Lord of the Rings. Stephen Lawhead's Pendragon Cycle, which is brilliant. But back to older works I was thinking of reading. I need to finish Tales of the Dying Earth. And I love books in my bed. Gene Wolfe there, but I have tried to read him a couple of times. I managed to finish one book, and I know that this is blasphemy, and people will gasp, and women will have fainting fits. And
hold on, I'll do it.
Clutching of pearls more precision.
Yeah,
there you go. Got out of the way.
I'm not a Gene Wolfe fan. Just not a Gene Wolfe fan. I can't do it. I want to be, should be. He's a super subversive writer, and like he's a Catholic, and he writes this mind-bending fiction, and I just do not like reading him.
What was his name again?
I can't pretend.
Gene Wolfe.
Oh, Gene Wolfe.
Gene Wolfe. John's favorite.
Yeah, I know who Gene Wolfe is. I haven't read him yet, but I know who he is.
Look, I read a book by him. I think it was called The Sorcerer's House. The Sorcerer's House or something like that. And it was a decent book, but I'm like, I don't get all the fuss over this guy. You know, he's good. And then I tried to read his book, his big masterpiece series, the Book of something like that. The Book of the Long Sun or something like that. Or I don't know, a book, something like that name. And I tried reading that, and the prose is so difficult. I couldn't do it. I had to stop after like 5 or 6 chapters, and I'm like, I'm just not enjoying myself reading this book. I mean, it's just not good. Great, apparently. Everybody says it's great and brilliant, but I couldn't do it.
You're a little black sheep robot.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I guess if you want to talk about stuff that's on the pulp list right now, probably the first I should finish is Tales of the Dying Earth.
Yeah, I definitely need to get.
Very interesting.
I guess my next project or next thing I want to look into reading is reading a bunch of the pulps. I know there's a lot of out of copyright pulps on Gutenberg,
and I
think we have a bunch around the house.
Like I got A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs on Kindle for free and
Oh yeah, a lot of it's
Maybe I
great.
should read Princess of Mars next.
Yes, that's fun because I will just say this: I've not had as much fun in reading science fiction as I had with that. I mean, I love Dune. I'm reading through actually Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein
Good book.
right now, but I will say that like I've read some. I tried reading Isaac Asimov's Foundation, and I'm just like,
I didn't like
okay, so
Foundation.
they can like they have super calculators. What else is there? And it's actually I don't go on Castalia House that much, but I get a lot of Daddy Warpig stuff where he's talking about the
Hey,
Fourth
Asimov.
Revolution. Yes, and one of the things I have noticed is there is this kind of almost an unwritten code of you can write science. It's science fiction. If you write it, you should have a degree in rocket science to do it or something, or get everything perfectly accurate with scientifically. And it's more of it's a lecture with characters, a lecture on what the future could be.
Yeah,
with some characters. That's
the
not a
Castalia
Princess of
crowd
Mars.
despises Asimov. I mean, like, you should see some of the venom in the comments section.
I've
mean,
seen it. I'm not
Yeah.
against Isaac Asimov. I'm just
his robot stories are his best work. They're
okay.
puzzle stories and
that's what I've heard
mysteries,
of
and
him
they're definite.
That's what I've heard of him because John C. Wright said like the big three. I actually have the third of the big three, A.E. Van Vogt. I have a few of his
A.E.
books.
Van Vogt.
But he said that Isaac Asimov, his books were not nearly as good as his short stories, and
He's right. iRobot's his best collection.
I will have to check that out then at some point. But I am a Princess of Mars was an action story on Mars, which was quite fun, and the science for the time was actually pretty accurate, which I hope to kind of emulate in the pulp that I'm writing. Though, granted, half of the stuff I'm dealing with is things like luminiferous ether, so I'm using pseudoscience but turning it into magic. So I don't know scientifically how much will be accurate, but I hope it's fun.
Oh, if I haven't written many very sciencey science fiction. I haven't actually written too many very science fiction. I'm more fantasy in my writing, but I do have a couple I'm trying to write now. They're definitely not going to be. I'm a writer. My brother's the engineer. He's the one with all the smart, technical, mathy stuff. I just like to make up funny characters. So, but yeah, I guess my next thing I'll read then is Princess of Mars, and we can talk about that sometime.
Oh yes, that's fun.
Oh, and I'm going to mention it because I am going to pound this point home until we discuss it. I am watching Miyazaki, and we are talking about it.
Yes, just let me catch up on them. I have it written on my whiteboard of I need to look those up and
he's amazing and unique, and I need to talk about him with someone, or I'm going to explode.
Yeah, I just finished Princess Mononoke, and wow. I have a question.
Okay, I gotta catch up then.
Anthony,
yeah, I just watched My Neighbor Totoro and My Neighbor Totoro, which is a great movie, and Castle in the Sky. Probably gonna get to Princess Mononoke. Not yet. We'll get to it.
That one's a lot different because with Castle in the Sky, it has elements of a fairy tale, but Howl's Moving Castle is so much more of a fairy tale and a love story too, and it's fun. And I've also read the book that it's based off of too, so I can add that aspect to it.
It was interesting watching My Neighbor Totoro after watching Castle in the Sky, and it was almost like something made by two different people. But the one connecting thread was that sense of optimism at life that I think is why Miyazaki is like, he's really he should be part of like the canon of heroes and Superversive.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the
Okay, we'll have to save all this.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'll stop.
Don't give too many spoilers. We'll talk. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this.
I will stop.
Yes,
I'm sorry. I'm watching him, and we will talk about it one day.
Yes, we will.
Me too. So, any closing thoughts? And thank you to everyone who joined us for our first Whippersnapper podcast. Hope you were entertained and maybe enlightened onto the mind of a millennial. And anyone have any closing thoughts?
Well, it's been fun to have you. Sorry, fun to be with you. Sorry, I don't know what I can't talk.
I can't either. It's okay.
It,
If you're a
it's
dragon, we'll blame your forked tongue.
eh, that's only a picture of my character. I promise. I don't look nearly that
Shh, you're a
horrendous.
dragon. It's okay. Accept it.
All right then. I hope to do this quite a few more times in the future. I'll try to make time with some of the exams and all the stuff I have to do for college, but I should be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a blast here. It
Excellent.
was, or at least if I had emotion, since I'm a robot, I would probably call it that. Of course, I can't confirm that for sure since robots don't feel. But I had what humans would probably refer to as a very enjoyable time. I really like talking with you guys, and I intend to continue doing this in the future.
Wonderful. And I, as the cheer weasel, will bubble with energy and send all of my cheerfulness out into the audience and say, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a rest of your day. Happy Lent. Has cross again until the next episode of the Whippersnappers. I say adieu and squeak. Cheer weasel out.